Welcome back to this week's conversation on the Prosperous Empath. I am so delighted to have Jasmin Haley with me on the podcast today. I knew of Jasmin before I came to know her personally. She and I were initially connected because of a couple of networking organizations that we were both formerly members of. And when I came to know her personally, I just had this sense that she'd make the perfect guest on the podcast. And it's so true. And something I'm really struck by in today's conversation is just how deep we're able to go in the chat. And I think that is the natural consequence of speaking with someone who has clearly done her own work, done her own internal work in order to reflect a vastly different external experience. And the level of depth and vulnerability and intimacy that we're able to get to in today's conversation is powerful and really transformative. I think it speaks to the power of doing transformational work. So I hope you enjoy today's conversation. Jasmin is an award-winning international speaker, author, educator, and podcaster dedicated to helping audiences understand that the time is now if they want to make an impact and serve their communities from the heart. She has helped dozens of entrepreneurs, professionals, executives, and business owners create thriving and profitable speaking and training businesses to scale their own legacies. Something I appreciate about today's conversation is we talk about so many of the obstacles and breakthroughs that are in the way of entrepreneurs scaling to multiple six figures and well beyond. And Jasmin really articulates so many of those breakthroughs that I work with clients consistently in overcoming, and I want to speak to a couple of them. So we really dive into Jasmin's journey in coming to peace with who she is and how that helped her make a major career pivot and shift from corporate to entrepreneurship. I think with ambitious empaths, we so often overly identify with our professional success that it can feel very threatening, oftentimes even in our bodies, in order to take that jump into entrepreneurship. Jasmin shares about her experience making that transition. We explore a lot of the internal work that we've both done in order to be able to share our stories powerfully and live out our legacies. We talk about that struggle with feeling that you aren't worthy to be doing what you're called to do and how you can really break through some of those mindset gaps in order to charge premium rates, in order to scale to multiple six figures, as well as how to get out of your own way, which often looks like bringing on a team, delegating and offloading more of the day-to-day work in your business in order to really powerfully step into your zone of genius. We explore the conversation around how, as ambitious empaths, we really need to focus on boundaries at home and at work in order to scale and prosper, and how finding a sense of belonging is so paramount, specifically for us as empaths when it comes to overcoming shame and feeling at home in your body, in your life with yourself, so that you can feel at home expressing your legacy and sharing your story powerfully. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation. Let's jump in. Hello and welcome to the Prosperous Empath podcast, designed especially for empaths and highly sensitive entrepreneurs just like you who are committed to achieving holistic success. I'm your host, Catherine Wood, Master Certified Coach, author, mastermind leader, and founder of Unbounded Potential, a boutique coaching firm for empathic entrepreneurs. I'm on a mission to bring empathy back into the world of business. Each episode will focus on achieving more by doing less through leveraging empath-friendly leadership practices, boundaries, rituals, and systems, all the while continuing to care deeply about ourselves, others, and the world around us. If you are committed to joyful living and running a conscious business, but amassing wealth while doing so, proving that you can have both in a society that tells you you can't, then you are in the right place. Join me here each week to find out how. Be sure to subscribe and leave a review so you won't miss an episode. Plus, you'll find all the show notes and helpful resources over at unbounded-potential.com. Well, Jasmin, I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today. Maybe just to kick it off, I'd love to invite you to share your pronouns and your story.
So my pronouns are she, her, and my story is evolving. I was the type of person, I don't know if any one of you listeners are like this, where you had your life planned out and you felt like this was a life that you were going to live. Well, I knew at 13, I wanted to be in dentistry, and I love teeth. And I have had a fascination with teeth since middle school. And I wind up applying to a specialized high school in New York City for dental assisting. And so when I think about now about the work that I do as a consultant, where I'm helping people use the most powerful asset that they have, which is their voice, I would have never thought I would be where I am today. But when I look back at my journey from being a clinician in public health, serving persons living with HIV and dealing with substance use disorder, for me working as an educational consultant, for me as a full-time faculty member who became completely burnt out from a toxic work environment, to someone that had the courage enough to start my business and start sharing my voice, and then had even more courage to pivot into a new industry and do consulting work. I realized that all of my challenges, all aspects of my life were necessary. And it feels good to be here and to still be growing and being able to support other people and using their voice and being able to grow their businesses is something that brings me a lot of joy. But it all started with teeth, y'all, okay?
And let the record tell, you have beautiful teeth.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Oh my gosh. I used to be teased so badly when I was a child. Like I whenever I would smile, I would actually cover my mouth.
Wow.
And so now it's like when I think about myself, when I laugh, I have a very big laugh. My laugh used to be made fun of as well, but I have a very big laugh and I show all my teethers because I'm all about like joy and just being authentically who I am and being at peace with who I am. I think coming to terms with that has been very liberating.
That I'm so appreciating the vast dichotomy of where you started to how you landed here. And I'm curious what that transition was like for you. It's like a full 180. I'm trying to connect the dots. Like I always appreciate in entrepreneurship how our experiences and our learnings are oftentimes pointing to the path, but I'm trying to connect the dots on your journey and I'm not seeing them.
Yeah, the catalyst to my change was the death of my mom. And so when I lost her unexpectedly, I grew up in a single parent household. And that was really, she was my world. She just didn't have the tools necessary to help me be able to experience the life at my full potential. And so I knew that there was more. I knew that I wanted to get out of the poverty. I knew I wanted to get out of not having the struggle that I saw all of my life. So when she passed away, what came to realization for me was all of the sacrifices that she made. And I wind up finding out that she didn't complete her GED until I was 5 years old. She was 45. And she never told me she didn't finish high school. In fact, she was ashamed of that. And she was she was the smartest woman I had ever known. And what I realized after she passed away was that she had hopes and dreams that she had to put on the side in order to take care of me and my siblings. And so when she passed away and I was in my toxic work environment, I started thinking to myself, with all the sacrifices that she's made, and I'm this miserable, I'm allowing people to treat me this way. I'm allowing people to stomp on my very soul. I was in the pits of despair. I had a beautiful husband. I had beautiful children, but yet I had continuous hospitalizations, emergency rooms, urgent care. And every single time I would come there, they would say, Mrs. Haley, all of your tests are negative. MRIs, gastrointestinal exams, negative, 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 negative. And what it was chronic stress. So by chance, people were along the way, people saw my leadership skills. I was awarded for leadership skills in school, but I happened to be invited to Chicago and by chance met this gentleman. He shared a slice of bacon with me. And he said, Jasmin, have you ever thought about owning your own business? His name is Elijah. We're still very good friends now. And that little seed put into me and said, I don't have to be stuck here. I don't have to be stuck here. And so within 4 months of meeting him, I started my business. And then within those 2 months, I left my toxic work environment and went all in on doing some temp work, speaking, and hosting events. So the catalyst to my change and why I do the work that I do and focusing on legacy, which is living now, not after I go, is because of the sacrifices of my mom and realizing that I wasn't living my legacy then. And I had 2 girls watching me and I was setting the example for them. So I didn't have enough love for myself even then, but I put my children's face at the forefront. Now I can say I do what I do for me, but for a long time, it was for my girls.
I so appreciate you sharing that. I share this quote a lot on the podcast, but I think it really speaks to what you're talking about. Michael Bernard Beckwith, if you're familiar with him, he's a minister out in California, and he talks about love, and he says that there's two ways that we can inspire change in our own lives. He says the pain pushes until the vision pulls. And when I think about people making massive change in their life, I often notice that they fall in one of those 2 camps, that they're often pushed forward by a personal pain in their own life, which I hear you speaking to with your work environment, or you're pulled forward by a vision. And I think that, for me, I can certainly resonate with lacking that self-love. That's been a huge part of my journey, but I saw someone coaching and I was really envious of her career trajectory and kind of the conversation she was in and the books she got to read and the insights she was having about her own life. And I'm so grateful for that friend because I felt like I saw a vision for myself in her journey that I had never seen before. But I think oftentimes for many of us, when we do experience that kind of come to Jesus moment or that realization that we can no longer continue the way it's been going, I think it can oftentimes be easier to take a leap of faith, to take a big jump. And the thing I really appreciate about you sharing all of that story is I think many people haven't done the internal work in order to share their story. And that's a lot of your life's work is helping people share their stories and tell their legacy. And so I'm curious for our listeners who do have a story to tell, and perhaps they're also identifying as sensitive or empathic, like what supported you in really doing your own inner work in order for you to be able to tell your story so powerfully, because it's really impactful hearing you share your story.
Therapy. I got a good therapist and I had to go through a couple of them. Like in the pit of your stomach, if you're saying this person is cray, they probably cray. It's time to move on, okay? Some of y'all be staying for too long now, So I actually happened to get a really good one. And she introduced me to Dr. Brene Brown. Mm-hmm. I never had ever heard anyone talk about shame and vulnerability the way that she did. There was also another book that I read that was called The Motivation Manifesto. I started that before I left my toxic work environment. This one is written by Brendon Burchard. And that just helped me get to a place of questioning myself. What is it that I desire? But one of the things that I realized is that I live with depression and anxiety. And it's extremely important for me because I can always go left to like the negative, right? That I was filling my brain, my mind every single day with affirming words. And so I would listen to word affirmations and meditations where it's like, I'm courageous, I am bold. I would go on YouTube. I would listen to people like Les Brown, Brendon Burchard, and other really motivational, great speakers every single day, y'all. It was like obsessive. And that was just giving me the courage to keep going. And when I realized that there were certain blocks along the way that I was creating, such as, this is a great one too for anyone that's a business owner. Sometimes we don't like to hear our voice, right? We'll nitpick. Like I would get an opportunity to be on a podcast, share my voice. And then I would be like, oh, why did I say that? And oh, why did I make my face this way? Like it was so counterproductive. So I didn't listen. Mm-hmm. I just went straight. Like I went straight, like blinders on, like the blinders they put on horses. I literally put out my stuff and move on. Never re-listen to anything, and just continue to pour in. And it didn't make the anxiety go away. It didn't make any of that go away with getting visible. Because I am introverted by nature. I prefer to watch my foolery at my own house, dance in front of the mirror by myself. Like I don't actually have to be amongst a group to gain energy. I don't know where I was going with that, but I just lost my thought. But oh man, it was something really good too, listeners, but I lost my thought there.
Well, we were talking about how you've been able to leverage your own personal journey to capitalize on your message.
Yes. But there was one tip that I was going to share and I forgot. I totally forgot. So the one tip that I did share was don't listen to yourself. If you can, don't listen. That was one thing that helped me kind of stay on track and continue to pour into myself. But there's one more, but it'll probably come in a little bit later. Hopefully I'll get that. And guess what? Here's the great thing. I don't feel embarrassed. I hope that when this is edited, you keep it, because I think it's important for us to know that even me, who I label myself as a professional speaker, I'm going to mess up. I'm not going to say everything perfect. And I'm okay with that. But that took time for me to get there. It wasn't something that happened overnight. And I think that's what we have to have a firm hold over. Like a lot of times I talk about a sense of worthiness. And I needed to develop that sense of worthiness and get like deeply rooted in that, especially when you get visible in the way that I've gotten visible with speaking. You're going to have people that question you. You're going to have people that say really mean things. And, you know, when you come to the realization of how futile life is, well, we each don't know when our last day or our last breath would be. It just changes how you show up. You know that we don't have a lot of time. And so when the time that we do have, let's make it count.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I appreciate you sharing that. Like, and we won't edit this out for sure. But I think back to my own journey with launching the podcast, you know, and there was a lot of fear to overcome. Like talking about public speaking, there was a lot of fear for me to overcome because I'm introverted, I'm empathic, I'm highly sensitive. And I like asking questions more than I like taking up space. And I've gotten lots of feedback since launching the podcast in October that people want even more solo episodes. And, you know, these conversations are so easy for me. It's what I do in my day to day, like asking a powerful question, like that's second nature. But taking a virtual stage, like grabbing my podcast mic and just talking into it for 45 minutes, like, dang, that's uncomfortable. And as I've kind of leaned into it and realized that, you know, I can give myself permission to take pauses and I can give myself permission to close my eyes if I need to, which I often do to be able to articulate my thought.
those are the things that I've gotten feedback on that people like, that they like the slow pace of my voice. And it's like, wow, really? That was my biggest fear in launching the podcast. So I agree with what
you have such a beautiful spirit.
Thank you.
It's just so like endearing. And that's what people can feel.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that you're right. And talking about that, the worthiness quotient that you spoke of, I think that that's, it's like anytime we take on a new goal outside of our comfort zone, right? It's like we just push up against another aspect of our worthiness.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I needed to also come to terms with understanding like my success, the gifts that I've been given is a part of my birthright. It's my God-given birthright. And how I personally feel is if he gave this to me and he is telling me the way in which I should utilize it, then who am I to question him? If it keeps coming up over and over and over again, Jasmin, this is where you need to be. So I'll give you a great example of me not listening. So I did 4 years speaking in events. That was all I did. And I decided to pivot at the end of 2019, beginning of 2020, outside of healthcare. I can't tell you why, because I was at the height of my success, but I knew deep inside that I needed to make a pivot. Well, guess what was coming about a few months after that decision? The pandemic, which I couldn't plan for. So everything that I had set up for myself and where I wanted to be in my business went out the window. And in that discovery, I found amazing business networks like where we met, and I met other amazing people. But throughout that journey, about 1.5 years into that journey, I was still fighting where I'm at right now in my business. In fact, I was telling myself that I wasn't worthy to be a speaker consultant. Even though I built my entire business model on speaking in events, I told myself that because I was a Black woman, a woman of color, no one would take me seriously because of one incident that happened, 1 or 2 incidents that happened in my previous industry. But every time I would get a client, guess what they would ask me for? They would say, Jasmin, can you help me with my speaker abstract? Jasmin, can you help me with X, Y, and Z in speaking? And people were saying, Jasmin, why don't you do speaker consulting? Why don't you go that route? And I refused to listen. And eventually what happened was my business got to a place where I had no more money left. I spent my last $10,000 on a coaching program. I did everything they told me to do. Nothing worked. And I was at a point where I needed to fire everybody that was on my team. And I finally decided, okay, fine. I'm going to write my offer on a Google Doc and I'll sell it for 2 weeks. And if I get one person guide, then I will follow through. I will follow through with speaker consulting. And I went on live for 2 weeks, y'all, 2 weeks. And I got one person to apply to my program. It was the highest program I ever sold. And when they applied, when we finally had the call, they went into my mastermind program. And the first thing she said was, Jasmin, I've been waiting for you to do this. So that's what I'm talking about, is the fact that we've been given the gifts, but sometimes we feel like we aren't worthy of it. We push away, and then we find out things aren't working out the way that they were supposed to be working out because it's not aligned. We're coming up with the reason why it needs to be a certain way. So I feel like there's sometimes our own worthiness will prevent us from the amazing success that's waiting for us, just to say, yes, I'll follow through. And that same client is still in my program, and she's amazing. And I started that program, y'all, with one person. Sometimes all we need is that one yes. That one yes comes from you. That's it. So that was a huge deal for me along my journey.
I mean, I love that reminder that the first yes comes from you. Like that, I think that's such a foundational tenet of when we manifest our future, right? It's like we just have to decide what we want, and we have to make up the decision for ourselves, and then we have to co-conspire with the universe, God, higher power, whatever you believe in, to explore how it's going to show up for us and when.
Yeah.
What a beautiful practice and faith in stepping into your power and your possibility. And I really want to come back to something, because you've now mentioned it twice. And it's this idea of growing up with a sense of lack, with a sense of, I mean, I don't know if you would use these words, but in my experience, it's like a poverty mindset, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I work with a lot of people who have poverty mindset, regardless of, where it stems from. And I think that specifically with this audience, who identify as empaths, who are natural givers, who are very practiced in contributing and being of service and helping, and it can oftentimes be at the expense of their bottom line, of being at the expense of them thriving. And so I'd love for you to talk about your journey in stepping outside of that poverty mindset into the abundance mindset, which I know you walk now in life.
It's still a work in progress. It's still a work. It's not all the way there. It is not all the way there. In fact, I feel like I chip away a little bit at it over and over again. Like when you look at, so I'm getting a little nerdy here, but when you look at the brain and how it works, the amygdala is responsible for determining what's fear and a threat to you. So that's where our bias comes from, right? And so it keeps us from, like, if we see a lion coming our way, we're not going to say, hey, kitty, hey, kitty. Like, we know we want to step away from that, right? But there's other fears and threats that come along the way that are false narratives. And for me, I have been programmed since childhood to always put others' feelings before myself. So it has taken me years to make sure I pay myself. Because for a while, I wouldn't even pay myself, y'all. Now, I know y'all listeners know what this is all about, okay? Okay, we take care of everybody else but ourselves, right? So I feel like that's just, it's a true work in progress. And every year it gets stronger and stronger. And so what I want to just be as transparent as possible, it isn't all solved. I think it first started with me showing up for myself, sharing my voice, and then started showing up in different ways. I feel like there's different seasons that happen in your business. So I remember, like, my season of getting to my first 6 figures and what that was like, and what I needed to work on as far as abundance, and thinking it was possible to even charge the value of the services that I have. And then to get to the multi-6-figure part, I needed to allow others to help me. Mm-hmm. Like, I needed to hire, right? And so as I'm now working on getting to the 7-figure mark, there's other places that I'm seeing there's leaks that I have to step into and expand in a way that shows that, okay, Jasmin, it's okay to put these parameters and these boundaries. And those boundaries took a long time for me. And I started seeing how even the boundaries that happened at home were impacting what was happening in business. So I wouldn't have boundaries with my kids all the time. I wouldn't have boundaries with my husband. It'll be his mistake, but then I got to pay for it. I'm like, no. Those are things that little by little you strengthen that muscle to start caring for yourself first. And so I think the next season of my life is doing more exercise, right? Cutting off the electronics at some point in time. I have sabbaticals. So every July and December, I take off. That's for my mental health. But that decision didn't come from my mental health until I was almost at a pit of despair once again. So for people that are highly sensitive and empaths, we have a different shift that we have to make on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. A natural inclination is to not prioritize ourselves. And so I often ask myself, if I want to be someone that looks like and demonstrates by behavior that I'm a person of integrity, the first person that I need to keep my integrity with is with myself. Mm-hmm. And how am I not doing that by this particular decision in my business? So that's the constant battle for me.
I mean, I appreciate you speaking to that we're all on a journey, and that each new levels we get to experience, similar flavors of the same default patterns and our fundamental nature that we come back to.
Yeah. I call it a Captain Save a Hoe. That's what I am.
Oh,
I'm a Captain Save a Hoe. If you got a problem, I'm going to try to fix it.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Literally, it's true. It's true. So now it's like, I have to remind myself, that's not my problem. They going to be all right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to leave them be. Because what do I like more than ever? I'm almost 40 years old. I got to start choosing peace and not choosing problems. Choose more peace.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's such an important reminder for empath entrepreneurs in particular, because I think that we often have a default orientation towards drama, because where there's drama, we can help, we can serve, we can contribute, we can solve, we can care. And it's true, we need to get to a place energetically where we're more committed to our peace than our problems or our drama or other people's.
Absolutely. And like, I have a wonderful husband, but I was bringing in people into my life that were female friends that weren't good for me. They just were not. They didn't really have my best interest at heart. And there was so many red flags. And what happened was I kept repeating the same type of personality over and over again. And at some point in time, there are patterns that we all fall into. And when you're very sensitive, when you're an empath, we know that we draw our energy from others. And there's something that some malignant personalities draw to, that caring part of us. And we have to protect that. And so now I'm a little bit more cautious. I try to look at behaviors. I try to hear, what people are saying to see if it really aligns with the kindness that I want to surround myself with.
Mm-hmm. We have a mastermind forum on our online, and my co-coach today, she posted something from my book, which really feels resonant with what you just said. And I want to share it with our readers. Mm-hmm. It's from the chapter Compassionate Living. I wrote, when left unhealed, our past will dismantle us. It will disenfranchise from our gifts and our creativity, while we will continually search and long for this experience of peace, joy, wholeness, and belonging. We will look for it in all the wrong places. And I don't know. I think that speaks exactly to what you just said. It's this idea that as heart-centered entrepreneurs and creators, when we're not committed to doing our own work and healing those wounds with ourselves, we look for them in all the wrong places and in all the wrong relationships, because they're often easier. It's almost more familiar to default to helping other people or prioritizing other people's needs or requests from us than it is to prioritize taking care of ourselves, honoring our boundaries, prioritizing spaciousness. Mm-hmm. And it's wacky, right? But it's a mind shift.
Yeah, that reminds me of Dr. Maya Angelou, where she talks about having a sense of belonging. When you look at the definition of belonging, it's typically talked about as far as community. But what Dr. Maya Angelou was talking about was a sense of belonging to self. And we don't talk about that enough. So how can I be a great friend? How can I be an amazing spouse, partner, mother, right? Like, I can't do any of that if I don't have a true sense of self. And that takes a lot of work internally to get to. And we need it as highly sensitive individuals that tend to have a Captain Save-A-Ho personality. That's me.
Oh my God. Captain Save-A-Ho. I'm laughing and crying at the same time. I don't know if you knew this, but that's the name of my book is Belonging, because of exactly what you just said. It's like, as empaths, when we belong with ourselves, when we create that sense of internal belonging, we can create it in our lives, our businesses, and our relationships.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's powerful. Like, it feels so good to be able to take up more space, but it also feels good to just be. That was also a challenge too, to not be saving anyone, to not do anything but just be. Because I felt like some parts of me felt like I always had to be constantly working. And I wonder if many of us ever feel like ease feels wrong. So then we find situations or patterns of different type of people to cause disruption. Whereas life is meant to be joyous and easeful. And sometimes we create it because there's a sense of us feeling like it isn't right.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. And that's, again, that takes a lot of healing. I'm actually was gifted this book called Rest is Resistance.
Oh, it's a great book.
I just started it.
Oh, you should listen to it. If you are not too far into it, she's an amazing narrator, Trisha Hershey.
Okay.
An amazing,
Yes.
like, profound. And I don't know if I can't remember if her father was a minister, but she just has a booming voice. Highly recommend.
Okay. All right, I'll do that. Because I listen to Audible mostly. But my friend and also previous client was the one that gifted it to me.
Love it. That's been one I've been also referring to many clients of late.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, I kind of want to connect the dots here because, we're talking about belonging. We've been talking about overcoming shame and healing those internal wounds. And you're a speaker consultant and a speaker coach. And I mean, these dots feel really connected for me because I don't really like public speaking, Jasmin. For a lot of these very reasons that we're talking about. And I honestly, I think for a lot of empaths and introverts and highly sensitives, they would relate. So, and it's not to say we don't have a message to tell and a difference to make. So I'm curious, like, how have you done this journey for yourselves? How do you support your clients in perhaps overcoming some of these roadblocks in the way of telling their stories and sharing their messages and feeling comfortable and that sense of belonging doing so?
Yeah. So for me, I think the biggest thing is I've always been an educator at heart. And I saw a gap specifically in healthcare where people living with HIV or people with substance use disorder were not getting the full amount of care that they were deserving of. And so I said to myself, here's a Captain Save-A-Ho, but in a good way. I need to advocate for people that can't speak up. And so that's how I started, right? And I also realized that at that time, there weren't any other speakers in the speaker circuit, specifically in healthcare, the industry I was in, that looked like me at all. And so there was a part of me, that rebellious kind of spirit, I wanted to disrupt things. I didn't want to open up a magazine and see a whole bunch of people that didn't look like me anymore. I was writing to editors and asking about having diversity in voice and got published that way. And I have been able to create my own stage until people were willing to hire me because the drive for that was higher. So a lot of times when I work with my clients, when I was teaching on other topics that were not connected to me on a heart level, it wasn't motivating enough for me to get out there. So if you know that there are people right now who need to be set free from your words, if you truly believe that time is the most precious commodity that we have and that it's limited, we will get over ourselves. And I don't want to be harsh or anything, but just seeing how quickly my mom was taken away in an instant, there was no wait time. That was it. Boom, she was gone. I knew that I only have this one life to live. And so when I think about like the clients that I work with, a lot of them are heart driven. Well, all of them are. They're heart driven. they're purpose driven, and they want to make a deeper impact. So I encourage you to pull out from your story currently right now, even if you want your topics to be related to your business. There's something in your journey that was a catalyst to the reason why you start to make a difference. And there's somebody in the audience waiting to hear you tell your version of it to help set them free. And that's what I keep the focus in on. It's the people that will come to me after and be bawling their eyes out or telling me their story and thanking me, or the dozens of people I've been able to help to be able to share their own and seeing them impact other lives. Those are the things that push me. And for some of you who need deeper work, I have many clients who have gone to therapy for visibility, or they have sought out other mindset coach that focuses specifically on visibility, just so they can muster up the strength to be able to come forward. And you can choose whatever stage you want. For some, your stage is podcasting. For some, your stage may be online summits, masterclass, and webinars. For some, your stage may be in-person events. Know that they're all speaking. It's all a form of training. So if it feels aligned to you, I want you to cheer yourself that you're even showing up and sharing your voice in this way. And it's all about choosing the vehicle that feels right to you.
That felt like some permission for me. Thank you for that.
Yeah. You don't have to feel like any pressure at all. Like some people are like, I don't want a keynote. I don't want a keynote either. I keynote when I keynote. Totally. Right now, my speaking is workshops. I'm hosting events and I'm bringing other amazing people together. Like I love bringing other people, helping other, like my event I'm having in October. I don't know. We have like 6 or 7 speakers or something like that. It could be 9. I don't know. We got a lot of speakers, right? I could have just had the stage for myself, but I'm bringing community because I know how beautiful it is when we all can tap into each other's brilliance. And so I can't wait for the transformation that's going to happen in that room. This is my ministry, is events, is hosting webinars. And then I may change and say, hey, I'm retiring that. And I want to use a different vehicle of using my voice. Mm-hmm. All of it is right.
I hear a couple of gems in that share. Like, first of all, I hear the reminder to get really connected with who we want to advocate for, which I think as empaths comes really natural for us. And I think when we can get really connected with who we want to advocate for or what we want to rebel out against, that it does become a lot easier to get over ourselves.
Yes, that's so good.
And then, well, those are your words.
It is true. I'm like, dang, I'm kind of good today.
Totally. And then the second gem is just the reminder that there's no right way to do it. Like a couple of years ago, I don't think I've ever shared this story because it was so embarrassing, but a couple of years ago, pre-pandemic, I was pitched to keynote at a conference in DC, a conference of engineers. Mm-hmm. And I got up on that stage and we talked about conflict management, and they were not my people. Mm-hmm. And as an empath, it was so hard to really connect with this audience who was looking for tips and tactics. And, they were really in their heads. It was so hard to stay connected with my heart center. And I'm just reminded that, I get to choose the audience, and the podcast audience has certainly been a really healing place for me in connecting with my message and owning my voice.
Yes. And I also want to encourage each of you to know, like, even when you are willing to step out, it just takes time to be able to learn how to navigate rooms like that. That's where educational methodology comes in. That's where the fundamentals of understanding that every single human on the face of the earth wants to be seen, heard, and valued. When you get that, it doesn't matter what profession you are in front of. It doesn't matter who's in front of the stage. If you learn how to tell your story in a way that makes the most sense. But sometimes, though, it takes, I don't know if that was your first keynote or anything like that, but it just takes some time to get there. In fact, I was pitching someone that was in the tech world. And let me tell you a question he asked me. 10 years ago, Jasmin would have been like, like crying and everything.
I really hope we record that video clip.
Like, I'm like one of those dramatic sobs, okay? Like one of those like, oh my gosh, can you calm down? All right. So anyway, this happened last week. I was pitching my workshop series for public speaking. And I was talking to somebody in the corporate world in tech. And he said, excuse me for 1 second. Excuse me. Before you head on to the next part, right? He says, from all your experiences, it's wonderful. Why do you think you're qualified to teach what you're teaching to someone in tech? Now, let me tell y'all, again, 10 years ago, Jasmin would have been like, right? But I have worked so hard on being deeply rooted in my own worthiness that I spit out my answer to him. And he was like, that was a good response. Yes, because I'm qualified. I don't care where you're from. I know my heart methodology, right, will help you be able to communicate in a way that humanizes your audience. These are things that people need. And I'm no longer afraid of that because I've seen my work and the processes that I've created for public speaking work for people from all different walks of life, ethnicities, age, social economic backgrounds. It doesn't matter. So for everyone listening, I want you to understand, like, people will. It's not a matter of, oh, well, maybe. No, when they question you, because they will. You've got to get firmly rooted in your worthiness and understanding that you have a right to share your message. And it may not be right for every single one, but what you're looking for are the people that need to hear it from you. They are there. And when you find them, it's going to be glorious. That's what you're going to hold on to.
Such a powerful reminder when you're grounded in your worthiness. Yeah, I mean, that just feels like a real takeaway from this conversation, because I think that it's so integral to what this podcast is really about. It's really about empath entrepreneurs having it all, right? Like when you're grounded in your worthiness.
Yeah. And when you need to take a break from people, just do it like I do. When I have my sabbatical, I tell I love y'all, but don't message me. I'm out. I'll see you in a month.
Hashtag boundaries.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Jasmin, as we wrap today, like, I'm curious, where should my audience reach out to you to connect with you first? I mean, we'll include all your handles in the show notes, but where would you recommend they start the journey?
I would love to connect on LinkedIn and Instagram. I would say is probably where I'm really checking my messages.
Okay.
I'm trying to lean away from Facebook, but I'm on there too. So holla at me.
Noted. And what do you think has supported you most in becoming a prosperous empath? What's made the biggest difference?
I think one of my coaches, her name is Jessica Rodriguez. The greatest gift that she gave me was she helped me tune into what felt good to me. You know, you have some coaches, consultants out there, they're like, you must do this, you have to do that. Like, it wasn't that way. And I think what she really helped me to exercise until I was ready to fly the coop was really understanding what it means to be aligned and like sticking with that and being okay and centered on that. So I think that's the biggest thing for me. Whatever I choose, does it feel aligned? And am I able to be my best self in whatever choice that I'm making? I think that's the greatest gift. And that allows us as highly sensitive individuals and empath to really flourish when we are.
Totally. I mean, the question, like, what feels good to you, right? For sensitive empaths, intuitive introverts, like, we can't operate out of alignment with what feels good to us. And we have such a felt sense of it, right? From our bones to our hearts, like, and everywhere in between. So I love that. I love that.
Yeah, thank you.
So lovely to have you, Jasmin. It was really such a beautiful conversation. And I mean, coming back to kind of where you and I first connected, we were going to schedule this conversation a couple of weeks ago and I wasn't feeling good. And you encouraged us to reschedule. And so glad we did. So much more aligned.
Yeah, absolutely. You can always press pause. We can always press pause and come back later.
Nice.
Thank you so much for listening today to this episode of the Prosperous Empath podcast with me, Catherine Wood. Make sure you subscribe and leave a review so you don't miss an episode and so more empaths just like you and me can find the show. As a thank you, each month, one lucky reviewer will receive a 60-minute coaching session with a member of our Unbounded Potential team. You can find all the show notes and bonus resources over at unbounded-potential.com. Thank you so much for listening and locking arms with me to bring empathy and prosperity back into the world of business.